Welcome to the Andy Ruther Show. Here is your host, Andy Ruther.
Welcome to another edition of the Andy Ruther Show. That is me, Andy Ruther. I never know how to start these shows. I'll let you guys in on something. A lot of times I'll do like 2 or 3 takes because I just don't like how I start it. It's a little different when you're going solo. All those insecurities come in. Like I did a few takes tonight. I was like, nah, that one stinks. Nah, that one stinks. Nah, let's just go with this. But I'm gonna keep this one. This one is officially gonna be on the podcast, on YouTube, on everything. So we're recording on Sunday night. This is Sunday, July 7th. And a lot of times I record on Monday or Tuesday, but I wanted to record tonight. I want to talk about some things, get some things off my chest, everything that's been going on in my head today, because it is my mom's birthday. So I've had a lot of thinking today. She would have turned 74 today. She was 69 when she passed, and don't make a 69 joke, please. That's how juvenile I am. I'm trying to be serious, and I'm like, don't make a 69 joke. Don't make a 69 joke. Don't make a 69 joke. So she was 69 going on 70 when she died January 8th, 2020. So this will be her 5th birthday since she passed. So yeah, man, it's it's a day where today I wanted to be alone, and Brittany took Isla to her parents. They live in Northern Kentucky, and they have a pool, so they had a pool day. So I just kind of wanted the day to be alone and to reflect and just think about my mom and just everything that's happened in the last 4.5 years since she passed, and also just reflect on her life and take the day with that. You're just trying to figure this stuff out. Even still, the the grieving process, the just thoughts that go in my head, trying to dissect those. And today I really wanted to just take the day to do some of those reflections, because I don't really have that time as much anymore now that I have a family. Whereas in the past, when I was single, my mom died, I had all the time in the world to think about it, and I did. So I took that today, and Brittany took the girl to that we'll put in air quotes, in-laws, because they're basically in-laws. I basically tell people we're married because I don't feel like doing the whole 9 yards with Brittany and I right now with people. I've basically been saying we're married. We own a house together. We have a child together. There's a life insurance policy she gets if I die. So we're checking all the boxes to basically be married but not married. But that's another discussion that I, to be honest, don't want to get into, because I feel it. I feel it. Like I want to do it, but I'm saying I feel it for my brothers, which maybe is related to my mom not being here. Like they're trying to be the one to say, "Hey man, you should get married. You should make this official legally." But I don't even know what my mom would say. I don't think she would say much. My mom really just wanted me happy. She wanted all her kids happy at the end of the day. That's all she wanted. So, she'd obviously want me to be married, because she was raised that way, and she was a pretty devout Catholic, so she would want that, but ultimately she'd want me happy. But man, I miss her. The stages of grief are pretty interesting, because at first it's almost shock and denial when you lose a parent, especially someone you're close with. My mom was my best friend, and people say that, and I know it. could sound cliche, but she truly was. She was my best friend, and I lost my mom and I lost my best friend at the same time, so I look back on that and I just think how just tough those first few days and then few weeks and then few months and even the first, I don't know, year and a half. The truth is until I met Brittany, it was tough sledding for me, and people don't really talk about it, and I think I have this opportunity with a podcast to just talk about it because I don't think there is an avenue or a platform. There is, but sorry, I'm stuttering on my words. I'm just thinking a lot. I just don't think enough people talk about it, especially men. The dealing with grief, the dealing with losing someone you love, because it sucks and it's not easy. I remember my mom first died, and like a few days later, I was in my parents' house. I was in the kitchen, and I got hysterical. This is a couple days after she died, and I just literally started just bawling. And I just said, "Please come back. Please come back. Please come back. Come back." Like I had it in my head that almost if I just kept saying it, that she would come back. And that's like how difficult it was. And it's irrational. I know that. I'm 38 years old and I'm begging her to come back because it was surreal. My mom went quickly. That's what made it so tough and still makes it tough is that she wasn't fighting a long-term illness like cancer or anything like that. She literally went from good health, doesn't feel well on December 31st to going to the hospital on January 3rd, and then she dies January 8th. And even in the hospital, it it moves so quickly where she's in the hospital and then suddenly she's struggling breathing. She's on a ventilator just like that. And I was in California, and then I got a call that I had to come home. And it just happened so quickly. And that's, like, still a tough part to deal with because I have so much questions still, even though you see the report, you see the medical diagnosis, you see the autopsy, not the autopsy, but the certificate of death, and you have all these questions for doctors, and it leaves you jaded. You know, the truth is I have a big mistrust for the medical field at this point, and whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. I just don't know how it happened so quickly. So I deal with that in the back of my head, and at times I get frustrated, I get angry, but at the end of the day, I wanna put that aside, and I wanna put that aside now because it's important to celebrate my mom's life and to celebrate the great moments and the happiness that she brought me and my brothers and her grandchildren and my dad and her friends and everybody, and that's what's important. Brittany said something to me today. She knew it's a tough day for me, and we were talking about everything in the morning and how I lost both my parents unexpectedly within 8 months. And she was emotional, and she never met my parents. She was emotional, and she said to me, "I just don't know how you're why aren't you so angry? I'd be so angry if I was you." And I said, "Look, I get angry at times. I do. I get angry. I get frustrated. There are times especially in the first 2 years, I would get so angry and I would just stop and I would just scream out, "Fuck." I would just scream it out, just out of anger. But I told her, "You have to find a silver lining." That's something I've learned, and that's something luckily I knew right away. For as much as losing someone like your parents and a best friend and all those things that come with it, the grief, the sorrow, you have to cherish the good. You have to cherish the 38 years of memories. I'm wearing a Catalina Island sweatshirt my mom bought me. This was the last trip we ever did together. We went to Catalina Island. It's about 20 miles off the coast in Southern California. Beautiful island. And it was our best trip. Not that we're rating trips, but we both agreed that was probably our most fun trip. My mom started visiting me, and we'd go on a trip somewhere in California since I lived out there in LA, and we'd go on a trip, and that year we did Catalina Island and other beaches in, Southern California. It was such a great trip. It was such a great trip. And every time I wear this sweatshirt, I think of my mom and good memories. And I don't know if this is ironic, but I was also wearing this sweatshirt the night she died as well. So this sweatshirt just it means a lot to me. That trip means a lot to me. I think about her and I just talking on the patio of the hotel, going to dinner, just talking about life. That was my relationship with my mom. We talked about everything, everything and anything in between. My career stuff, politics, anything going on socially, stuff with the family, her friends. I could be her ear if she wanted to complain about my dad. And we just talked. We would talk probably once every 7 to 10 days, and we'd talk on the phone for about an hour plus. And my dad would always make fun of us, and, "You 2 just gossiping over there." But it wasn't gossip, it was I mean, it could be, but we just talked. And that's probably the thing I miss most without having my mom. Just somebody I could talk to. 'Cause it didn't matter if it was a good thing, if it was a bad thing, she was always the first person I called, always. And even though I was 2,000 miles away and I had lived on the western part of the United States for all those years, we actually grew closer with distance, and our relationship solidified more with distance. And I always cherished coming home so much. And I look back and I'm so thankful that I decided to surprise her for her birthday in 2018, especially since she passed about a year and a half later. What a great memory, and my dad was in charge of that. Me flying in, surprising her. He didn't even come back with me in the car. He had him drop me off up the street, and I walked down, and he had told her he was going to Sam's Club, and I walked right in, and she's just shocked. Here I am, just from the other part of the country, just walking. She didn't even see me walking. We have a long driveway, walking up the driveway, and it was so adorable. My niece was there with my mom, and she had known all day that I was coming in from California, and my mom was so happy. She was so happy, and I was so happy, and that's such a wonderful memory that I have. But there's no course in how to deal with grief. There's no course in how to deal with death. I know what's helped me. I know things that have helped me. One of the most important things I've done is I have a journal for my mom when I think about something, or if I just wanna talk to her. I feel like I'm talking to her, and I just write in it. It might be a quick 1 or 2 sentences. "Hey, I thought of that time we went to the movies, mom, and the dude farted real loud." I mean, it could be as stupid as that. Or if I just really miss her and I just wanna write to her. And that thing has been so clutch for me. I used to write in it all the time after she died, all the time. And it feels like I'm talking to her. And I have one for my dad as well. But as time has passed, and, they say time heals wounds, and it's helped having a great woman by my side and now a daughter. All those things have helped so much. I don't write as much in it. I still think all the time about her, but I don't write as much in it. But that has been a huge help. I always tell people the three things that have helped me the most through all this was the journal, exercise, and therapy. Those are the 3 things. If you wanna add a 4th, occasional marijuana use to relax me, to just decompress. So, basically, those 3 or 4 things, but especially the journal, the exercise, and the therapy. I wanna read something, though, something that I said during my mom's eulogy, which was something she said, and I'm so lucky to have this because I go back on days like today, and I can see this, and I can read it. And this is from a journal where my mom describes her own mother's death. And I read this during my mom's eulogy, and this is what she wrote in her own journal coping with her own mother's death. I learned to let God have control, and sometimes I don't understand his ways, but I have to trust him. I also learned being hooked up to tubes and machines is not always the answer either. When my time comes, I hope my family and I have the courage to let me meet my maker without unnecessarily prolonging my life. It's pretty powerful. And we had to make that decision on that final night when things went really south and all these medical personnel were in her room and they were doing chest compressions and they were zapping her. And we were there with my dad and he basically said, "Do we want to continue this?" And that was tough because you make that decision that, hey, mom wouldn't want us keep trying. What would her quality of life be? And we all agreed that, her time it was her time. And that night it's a night that I'll certainly never forget, and just seeing how my brothers were and my dad was and how tough it was, and it was not an easy night. But again, silver lining. These were my mother's own words talking about choosing a time when you need to just let go. And then she wrote something else which really personified my relationship with her as well. Again, this is what she wrote about her own mother. My life is special due to the wonderful relationship I had with my mother. She was my rock and my fortress, and for a long time, it was hard to say goodbye. I know she's still with us spiritually, but I miss calling her on the phone and chatting with her. She was the one person I felt really cared about everything in my life. My heart will have an empty part for a long, long time until she and I meet again. Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel. Every single word in those sentences I get. And I think what makes it tough is that when someone dies, people offer condolences, they offer support, but then life goes on. I've said this, but it doesn't go on for you. It doesn't go on for the people mourning a loss of someone because that lasts forever. But life's hard, you know? It's hard. It doesn't mean I should feel sorry for myself because I don't. I'll never feel sorry for myself. I was very blessed, very lucky. I had a loving, compassionate mother that I had 38 years with. Same for my dad. But there's a book that really, really helped me, and this is a book I couldn't recommend enough for anybody. It doesn't matter whether you lost someone, whether you're dealing with tough times. This book, which is a book that's been around forever, has helped me so much. This book right here. It's Victor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Highly recommend this book. It was actually a required reading when I was a senior in college. And back then I was too immature to understand it or even care or even probably read the whole damn thing. But I thought about it after my mom died and I read it again, or at least fully for the first time. And then after my dad died, I read it again. So Viktor Frankl, who wrote this book, he was a clinical psychologist, an Austrian clinical psychologist who was put in a concentration camp during World War II. And he actually went to Auschwitz. He was sent to Auschwitz. He was separated from his family. And he basically wrote secretly all the things he observed and basically finding a meaning for life in the most dire and disgusting, awful circumstances. Everybody in his family was killed in the Holocaust. Basically, everybody, I'm pretty sure. His children, his wife, his parents. But he found meaning. And that's obviously the premise of the book, hence Man's Search for Meaning. And it's not a long read. Even with the afterword, it's 165 pages. But the book is so great because he finds meaning again in the absolute worst conditions. There's nothing worse than the Holocaust. There's nothing worse than a genocide. Working a slave labor camp every day, not knowing if you're going to live, not knowing where your children are, not knowing where your parents are, not knowing where your wife is. And he breaks it down in this book. And I have so many notes in this book, and I'll look at it occasionally. Again, it has nothing to do with if you lost a loved one, but it's a great tool for that. To me, it's if you're just going through some things. But just right here in this part, I have underlined, he writes, if there is a meaning in life at all, then there must be a meaning in suffering. Suffering is an ineradicable, that's a tough one to say. Suffering is an ineradicable part of life, even as fate and death. Without suffering and death, human life cannot complete. So basically, he's saying you have to find meaning in the suffering Because if you don't, what's the point of suffering? So to kind of circle back to what Brittany was saying and asking me, why aren't you angry all the time? I'd be so angry losing my parents in that short span. If I'm angry all the time, what's the point? Why am I here? Why don't I just die? And that's what he gets to in this. What's the point? There has to be some sort of meaning through these difficult times. If I don't have meaning through the death of my parents, the death of loved ones, through tragedy, if there's no meaning to it, why am I here? What am I doing? What's the point? For me, everything that has happened has only made me stronger as a person. That's meaning. It's made me emotionally stronger, mentally stronger. It's made me a better person overall. I'm not saying you have to lose your parent or parents to become a better person. Definitely not saying that. But I'm just looking for a silver lining. That's the truth. And that's what's happened with me. And I'm fortunate. Again, I had a wonderful relationship with my mom. She's my best friend. We go on trips together. We talk about everything. She did a podcast with me, which I listened to. I'm so lucky to have that. My old podcast, The Dent Report, she sat down with me in September of 2018, and we did like an hour and a half podcast. And Brittany made a great point to me tonight. She said, "You know how awesome that is that you have a podcast with your mom? She's gone, but you have a 90-minute recorded conversation about life, and you're learning things about your parents and their relationship and about how my mom grew up on a small town in a farm in Ohio. And we're just talking about life, and I'm hearing her voice. Just two people shooting the shit, but it's a mother and a son, and I have that, and I'm grateful, and I'm fortunate, and the truth is I'm blessed, and there's meaning to all this. So I really cannot recommend this book enough. As I flip through, I have so many things underlined in it, and there's just so many different things that really hit home. Like, here's a story that I have underlined real quick. Here's a story that he writes talking about one of his patients after he got out after World War II, and he was just a clinical psychologist. He says, "Once an elderly general practitioner consulted me because of his severe depression. He could not overcome the loss of his wife, who had died 2 years before and whom he had loved above all else. Now, how could I help him? What should I tell him? Well, I refrained from telling him anything, but instead confronted him with this question: What would have happened, doctor, if you had died first and your wife would have had to survive you? Oh, he said, for her this would have been terrible. How she would have suffered. Whereupon I replied, You see, doctor, such a suffering has been spared her, and it was you who have spared her this suffering. To be sure at the price that you now have, to be sure at the price that now you have to survive and mourn her." He said nothing, shook my hand, and calmly left my office. So right there, you have meaning. He's severely depressed over his wife's death for 2 years. And Victor Frankl flips the script on him and says, by her dying first, There's meaning in her death. You saved the suffering for you. She didn't have to suffer if the role was reversed. It really is a glass half full way of looking at things, which again, I think is very important. Hmm. I don't know if I'm just ranting, guys. I just want to get this off my chest. This is like therapy for me sometimes. It is therapy, basically. And I don't think people get it though. That's what I'm saying. I don't think enough people understand or openly talk about it. I mean, my own family doesn't talk about it. My brothers don't talk about it. I don't know. I don't know how they've coped, to be honest. I was with a few of my brothers yesterday, and I couldn't help but just think about my mom the whole time because I believe she's still here. I believe she's watching over. I believe in that, and that's a good feeling. That's really good. That's a nice feeling. Like, I had solace today, and I didn't do anything. I stayed home and I did laundry, I grilled out, I tried to take a nap, I listened to the podcast I did with my mom, and I just felt comfort. And sometimes that's all you need. And then my girls came home, Brittany and Isla, and I felt great. I was so happy to see them. Isla is such a happy baby. She's such a happy, energetic baby. And I swear it's like my mom sent her for me. I feel that way. I feel it all the time. It's like my mom knew all the struggles I went through, and she just gave me this little angel. That's how I feel. Because she's such a happy kid, and she's such a daddy's girl. She's such a daddy's girl, and I love it. It just makes my day. I love seeing her when she wakes up. I love picking her up from daycare. I love just hearing her say daddy. And that's what I need to remember when I have days like this where I'm reflecting on everything, when I stress out about stuff. I need to remember that I have a girl. I have a loving partner. I have a house. I'm blessed. Not stress the small things. Remember where I came from. My dad told me something after my mom died. He said, "Your mother was always really worried about you, Andy." She said, "You were very lonely in California," which was interesting when he said that to me because I never thought I was lonely and I never felt that I was lonely. But then I heard it and then I just started thinking about my time in California and I was lonely. Not lonely in the sense, "Oh, I'm gonna sit in my apartment all day and mope lonely." Not your traditional something you'd see in a movie or a TV show lonely, not that lonely, but lonely as in I didn't have meaning. Go back to the book, Man's Search for Meaning. I didn't have meaning. I didn't think I did. I had fun. I don't regret a thing. I loved my time in California. I love the state of California. It's the most beautiful state. I loved it. I had a lot of fun. There was no meaning in my relationships that I had out there for the most part. There was no meaning to a lot of things I did. Now I feel like I have meaning and a purpose. And that probably changed when I had a kid. And it started when I met Brittany. And it started before that when I came home. Because if you don't have meaning, what's the point? What's the point? Again, it just goes back to this book. What's the point? And his overall theme is, what does he say? Sorry, there's a million things right here. He's basically saying, and I don't know where it's at, but he talks about love at the end of the day is what you should be searching for. Whether that's love of a partner, of a family member, of a passion in life. I know it sounds basic and again cliche, but it's basically about love. Which brings me to a quote, which again might sound corny, might sound like something a girl would put on her Instagram. But my mom had this quote above the computer in my parents' basement. It's a Helen Keller quote, but I think it's a great quote. And I've thought about this so much since my parents died. It's the quote where Helen Keller wrote, "What we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose. For all that we love deeply becomes a part of us." Once again, what we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose. For all that we love deeply becomes a part of us. And that's what I think about when I think about my parents, right? They're a part of me. I love them. I will always love them. I can't lose that. I can never lose that. Like she's saying, what we enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose. I can never lose those memories I had with my mom. I can never lose those conversations we had. I can never lose the time that she flew out to California after I had a traumatic brain injury and she was sitting by my hospital bed. I can never lose that. That is on the inside here. That's a part of me. I firmly believe in that. Once you love something, it becomes deeply a part of you. Again, you might say, oh, corny Helen Keller quote, which is fine. But I think there's legit substance to that. Substance, whatever. I don't know what I'm saying. It's a good quote, man. It's legit. And my mom was always there for things like that, a good quote or just trying to tell me to relax, calm down, you know. But now I got to just think about her, pray to her, whatever you want to call it, and think, hey, mom, what would you tell me? What should I do? But I don't want to be angry. It doesn't mean I don't get angry sometimes. It doesn't mean I don't get bitter sometimes. It doesn't mean I don't get frustrated. But I don't want to go down that path. Nobody wants to be a bitter, angry person. You just don't want to do that. I want to remember the good things. I want to remember like this. This is a picture I have, one of the pictures I have on her desk. This is my mom sticking her tongue out. It's a happy picture. It makes me happy. Just a picture of mom sticking her tongue out. And when I look at that, I see her saying, just relax, Andy. Just calm down. Life's going to be okay. But damn, I still miss her, you know? I miss her all the time. What are you going to do? It's life. It's brutal. We live and we die. It's a matter of making the most of it while you have it and using the tools that I can use to make my life better, other people's lives better, because you never know. That's my one thing of advice. You never know when it's going to happen. It was like a nuclear bomb went off for my family, just blindsided out of nowhere. You never know. You just don't. And it's surreal. And that whole time was almost a blur to me. I would get solace in sleep. And that's what Victor Frankl talks about in this book. He shares a really interesting story. He saw one of the people in the concentration camp was having a nightmare. And he went to wake him up, but he stopped himself right before he woke him up and he said, "No. What that nightmare that they're having is not worse than the nightmare of reality when they wake up and they realize they're in a Nazi concentration camp." That's powerful. And it's true. Well, this is a deep one, guys. We're not gonna follow it up with like a Cairns and Anderson. I mean, we could, but we're not. We're not gonna do that. I just want to get this off my chest, guys. And I'll occasionally do this with the show because I want to, and that's the truth. And if it's not for you, I understand that. If it's too heavy, I totally understand that. And maybe it's selfish saying this is for me, but I think it's important to talk about these things. I think it's important to hear people talk about these things. This stuff is all real. And we're all just trying to cope. We're all trying to get through it. So again, when it comes to these things, I always say journaling to a loved one that you lost, exercise, therapy, throw in some occasional marijuana use. I think that's helpful. It's much safer than alcohol. Those are kind of my takes. Healthy hobbies. So if you want to call the hotline, you can do that still. 859-935-0078. Once again, 859-935-0078 is the hotline. So I obviously will talk about anything. So the hotline is also open to anything. Just remember that. And if you want to email me, I can be reached at the Andy Ruther Show at gmail.com. It's another way to reach me. All right, guys. That is the show. We did not have a chance to get to the wild fight that broke out on a Carnival cruise. I will say that for a different episode. Probably wouldn't be a good segue after what I've talked about, hopping into the Carnival cruise fight. Although that'd be very Andy Ruther-esque if I did that. No, we'll keep it short and sweet on this episode. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for letting me do this. That's the truth. Because there are at times insecurities with these topics, and I always say, do I want to talk about this? And ultimately I know I do, but it's still a little more difficult to get out sometimes. But thank you guys for letting me do it. I really, truly, truly appreciate it. Have a great week. As always, tell somebody you love them. If you haven't told somebody for a while, let them know. Give them a nice note, a nice card. Give them a hug, give them a kiss, whatever you got to do. All right, we'll be back next week. I'm out of here. Peace.